How's it going, everyone? It is Skullzi here with the latest and the greatest gaming news. Another day goes by and we get yet another new Bethesda interview. Only this time it's Todd Howard time.
Say his name time, it's Todd time, Todd time.
Wonderful! This most recent interview was between Todd Howard and The Guardian, and this interview was published literally today, the same day I'm uploading this video, November 30th, 2020. And as always, we're gonna break all this down together. That way you can have all the links and stuff to verify all this for yourself if you choose to, and that way you can see what the actual source of all this is. And the source of today's interview is right here, like I said, over at The Guardian. I'll go ahead and I'll drop a link to it down in the description below so you can go ahead and read the entire thing if you want to. However, in today's video, I'm going to go ahead and take all of Todd Howard's statements and break them down in one easy to follow video for you all today. That way we can kind of try to figure out if Todd Howard might be hinting at anything we could expect to see in Starfield, The Elder Scrolls 6, or just the future of Bethesda Game Studios in general. This entire interview pretty much talks about Todd Howard and his experience at Bethesda Game Studios and where he sees the future of Bethesda going. The interview begins by Todd Howard talking about the first game he actually worked on, which was Terminator Future Shock. He says when Bethesda came to Fallout, people were saying, oh, you're doing a post-apocalyptic open world in 3D, but Bethesda already did that in Terminator. It's an underrated game that not a lot of people have played, and he thinks Quake came out right afterwards. That might have had something to do with it, and understandably so, because Quake was a huge game that probably took a lot of the attention away from Terminator Future Shock. But Future Shock was made with 8 or 10 people, and it did a lot of things that no game had done before. Todd remembers it got a lot of critique at the time, which annoyed him to be honest, but he thinks the game was way ahead of its time, and it may have just set the pace and the overall kind of vibe for the games that Bethesda Game Studios would focus on making. And I believe when I interviewed Ted Peterson, he also mentioned working on this Terminator Future Shock game and said it was a lot of fun and there are some interesting things that took place during that game's development. And he even said it kind of like was a bit ahead of its time and was one of their first attempts at a game that Bethesda Game Studios would kind of be known for making in the future. Obviously, Terminator Future Shock was a different style of game than like the Elder Scrolls and Fallout, but still, it was a first-person 3D game that kind of set the pace for what Bethesda Game Studios would later be known for. Next up, Todd Howard talks about how he feels that open-world games were really starting to get popular over the last few years, and now they're kind of like the mainstream thing in gaming. He says over the last generation, open-world games became very popular as developers got used to making them and saw the impact they could have on players. And Todd Howard says he thinks that what games do best. They take you to a whole nother world, they immerse you into another life, one with a lot more adventures, and he feels that video games are a medium that can tell very good stories, and even linear games that aren't open world can do some fantastic things. But for Todd Howard and Bethesda Game Studios, putting you in an entire another world, an entire open world where you wonder what you can do there, what the possibilities are, that's really what he feels sets gaming apart from other forms of entertainment like books or movies. Todd Howard feels that video games offer you the ability to actually live another life in another world, a completely other place that you can immerse yourself and have all these adventures in that you can remember for the rest of your years to come, kind of like you actually lived these adventures for yourself. And he's kind of right. Video games are totally unique in that way, and I feel like that's why gaming is starting to be the biggest entertainment industry ever, even getting larger than movies and TVs almost at this point. And seeing how Bethesda Game Studios focused on that style of RPG and game development, Todd Howard was asked how he feels Bethesda Game Studios could evolve in the next generations of gaming to come. Todd Howard says, let's just cast forward to the next 5 to 10 years of gaming. For him, it's more about access than clock cycles, he says. He believes that the biggest changes in gaming won't just be about graphics getting better or AI getting better. He believes it's all about accessibility, which is interesting considering the recent Bethesda and Microsoft acquisition and people wondering if future Bethesda games will all be Microsoft exclusive, meaning a lot less accessible than if they were available on all platforms. And even though that hasn't been confirmed, it's definitely possible. But to hear Todd Howard specifically talk about how he feels that the future of gaming is all about accessibility is pretty interesting, because in previous interviews he kind of said the same thing when asked directly about future Bethesda and Microsoft exclusivity. But Todd Howard continues by saying that he feels that just the time it takes to even turn on a console and load up some of the games is a barrier. It's time that you're not enjoying being in that game world. And the kind of games that Bethesda Game Studios makes are the ones that people are going to want to sit down and play for hours at a time. If you can access a game more easily and no matter what device you're on or where you are, that's what Todd Howard thinks the next 5 to 10 years of gaming is all about. And that's super interesting because with like Google Stadia and Bethesda's Orion, or I guess now Microsoft's Orion and Microsoft's xCloud and just all these other streaming things that go beyond just actually saving your data in the cloud, you can actually now have games streamed directly to your computer from a different system altogether, and that system could actually process the graphics and the CPU elements if your system can't actually handle playing the game as well as the other system streaming it to you. The future of gaming is very, very interesting, and accessibility and streaming in general are definitely going to be a major factor in gaming to come, and that seems like a strange thing to me because I still like having physical copies of games, although recently I've understood and kind of like migrated over to the digital age. Having digital stuff is a lot easier and you're able to not lose it and it won't break if it's on your hard drive. It's saved to your Steam account or whatever other platform you use, but I still do miss having like the actual physical thing on my shelf. But Todd Howard continues by saying he would also like to see in the future of gaming more reactivity in game worlds, like more systems clashing together that players can express themselves with. But he thinks just making games larger just for the sake of scale is not always the best goal. He wants to see new systems in these games and new ways for players to interact with the game worlds. Todd Howard says previously someone might just play a game for a few months, but now long-term play would be like 6 months, and now even longer, now sometimes even years. Todd Howard says games can be played for a lot longer than they used to be, so having these game worlds be even more immersive with more systems in place would be a better solution than just making these game worlds larger. Then Todd Howard was asked about how the Fallout 76 fiasco went down, how Bethesda Game Studios made a few mistakes with how they handled certain things with Fallout 76, like the whole subscription fee thing, and how the game was launched in a pretty rough state, and Todd Howard actually admits that they did let a lot of people down, but thanks to gaming's evolving nature and how Fallout 76 evolved, it gave them the opportunity to redeem themselves over the years. And with all this in mind, Todd Howard was asked how he feels if single-player games actually have a future in gaming. And Todd Howard responds by saying, obviously we're big fans of single-player games, and we've had some success with some multiplayer ones as well. We have found that even if it's multiplayer, whether it's Elder Scrolls Online or Fallout 76, a large number of our players want to play it like it's a single-player game and not have the other players distract them from it. Games handle multiplayer in different ways, and I think it all has merit. Todd Howard says he plays all sorts of games and even watches games on Twitch. He says there are only a few games that I'll deep dive into, and he does try his best to try as many things as possible. Lately, Todd Howard has been playing a lot of Among Us, which is interesting. You could have literally been playing Among Us with Todd Howard. That would be freaking crazy. But Todd Howard looked at Among Us for its creative reasons and then for its social and personal reasons. He really likes Among Us. And in terms of what Todd Howard looks for in a game is a world that he wants to be in and opportunities to tell his own story. He says in Bethesda Game Studios games, whenever they really go linear, such as here's the thing you gotta get, here's where you gotta go, it's not always as successful. But when they give the player a short-term, medium, and long-term goal, and then make sure they have a lot of options and make sure that the game is reacting to them, that's where he thinks the real magic happens. That's when a player feels like, look what I did, rather than a creator giving something to you and you consuming it. You actually gave something to the game and you come away with a sense of pride. You've accomplished something for the week, for example. He continues to say that's a lot of things that people who don't play a lot of games never quite understand. When you play a game and you accomplish something, that's real to you. It feels like a real accomplishment in your life. Or at least it does to Todd Howard and to a lot of people he met who love gaming. You can finish the week and say, I saved this world, and you can legit feel that way, and Todd Howard says that's the magic of gaming. And I couldn't agree with him more completely, and that's something I've actually brought up with friends in the past, and it's super awesome to hear Todd Howard feels the same as me. Gaming is a super special medium, an experience for the player to actually feel like they took place on this adventure that saved this other beautiful world that you've spent so many hours running around and exploring. It's a magical thing, and that's why I feel like gaming is not going to go away ever. I feel like it's just going to evolve to be even more mainstream, but that's not a bad thing because it's going to have even more innovation, even more technology, and a lot more creativity in it, as we've seen recently with a huge influx of indie games. Indie games are very, very, very beautiful. Some of them are just like complete working pieces of art, and with all this in mind, and with Todd Howard's statements here, I am not only excited for the future of Bethesda Game Studios, but also for gaming as a whole, and it seems like Todd Howard and Bethesda Game Studios actually see the future of gaming, the direction it's headed, and it seems like they're going to spearhead all of this into their awesome and amazing worlds they create for their RPGs, and I just can't wait for Starfield. I cannot wait for The Elder Scrolls 6, and even though we didn't get any direct new evidence or pieces of information regarding either one of those new games in this interview, just based on all the statements Todd Howard made in this interview alone gets me very excited for these games and beyond. But as always, what I want to know is, what do you think about all of this? Let me know down in the comments below what has you the most excited for the future of Bethesda Game Studios games and gaming in general. And as always, if you enjoy the content, be sure to like the video, subscribe, and turn notifications on so you don't miss the latest uploads. And if you want to help grow the channel and the community, you can share this video as well, because sharing videos is like the best way to help grow a channel and the community. That would be much appreciated. And speaking of appreciation, this video was brought to you by the following amazing people. If you want to help bring the community future videos and content and get a video shout out like this at the same time, you can support the channel over on Ko-fi, Patreon, or here on YouTube as an exclusive channel member. Links for all these and more are down in the description below. And as always, thank you for watching. Be sure to tune in next time when Todd Howard saved the world with Starfield. That's the magic of gaming.
Wonderful!